Alright, as you can see here, I use AGV and Shoei as my helmets. As a matter of fact, I started with GTR version 1 when I made my motorcycle driver's license. And this is the GTR 2 and this is the AGV K6. So I'm pretty familiar with, let's say, premium helmets, and I love Shoei for the fit, and I really admire the AGV K6 for it being very lightweight. Overall, the build quality of both brands are amazing. So I'm very curious about the Ruroc, and I want to get two things out of the way. For transparency, Ruroc sent me this helmet for free for an unbiased review. They have no say in this review and they will not see this video before you do. All of my videos are unbiased, and I really want to kind of underline and emphasize how and with what mindset I'm going into this review. Before I was actually interested in Ruroc, I got familiar with all of the YouTube reviews about Ruroc, and unfortunately also this huge influencer push and influencer marketing campaign that Ruroc did a couple of years ago, where they only had, at least from my perspective, I perceived it as a very biased media push of their brand, and that in actuality left me with a little bit of a bitter taste. Then there were a lot of customers that were complaining about quality control, some issues with the padding, issues with the visor and stuff like that. So that made me very hesitant to check out Ruroc in the previous years. Supposedly, with this new EOX line and with the, I think it's version 4.0 of the Atlas, supposedly they have kind of solved all of that issues. That being said, I'm going into this review from a perspective of a Shoei and AGV user with the knowledge of all of the customer reviews that I've seen online, plus the, let's say, bitter taste of all of these big influencers. I'm a very small creator, so seeing all of those big influencers kind of pushing Ruroc onto the market and kind of proclaiming that it was the best thing ever. For example, what I really never understood is all of the reviewers or the creators back then said, oh, Ruroc has this toolless way to kind of remove the visor, right? And I'm sitting here, I can remove my Shoei visor without a tool, and it's much easier, or not easier, but from my perspective, much safer, because on the old Ruroc you had like a screw. And I was always wondering what happens if you lose that screw, or if it detaches while you're riding because it got loose, right? So I was like, what are you talking about? Why are you kind of proclaiming that that is the best thing ever, while we have Shoei helmets and AGV helmets where you don't need any tool to remove the visor? So that was really weird to me when I saw that. Anyway, that is many years ago. But again, I'm going into this review with that mindset, and therefore I really want to underline this is an unbiased review. Yes, I got that helmet for free, but they have no say in this. They don't see this video before. And truth to be told, from the perspective of a professional filmmaker, and I am, for those of you who don't know, I have been a professional film editor in the advertising industry for over 20 years. So I know my worth, and truth to be told, even if making these videos would be minimum wage, I put so much work into making these videos, filming, editing, color grading. I buy my equipment, I buy my music, and I put so much work into this that, as I said, even if I would get minimum wage, that would not cover the cost of the products that I get sent for free. So in my eyes, I don't see any point of kind of glossing over the product that I'm reviewing. I will tell you the negatives, but I will be fair and I will also tell you the positives. And then you can kind of evaluate if those negatives that I mentioned to you apply to you. Or if you think, yeah, those negatives don't apply to my use case, I still want to get that product. Therefore, very unbiased review. I did receive it for free, but this is an unbiased review. Now let's get to the unboxing first, and I will capture my honest first impressions and then we continue with the review. Alright, let's start the unboxing and the first impression. This is, again, the first impression. The review will come later in this video. Skip around and use the chapter markers if you want. By the way, here in the back you see my Shoei GTR version 1 that I used to make my driver's license, and I have been riding in it for a very long time. Then I switched to the GTR version 2 and later on to the AGV K6. So I have, I would say, a pretty good idea of what I personally like in a helmet, and I'm looking forward to see what this Ruroc EOX in the style Sanguis in size L is going to look like. All right, let's open up this box and see what's inside. So here's the packaging for the extras, don't need that. All right, so I can see the packaging is definitely a little bit nicer than on the AGV, for example, but who cares about the packaging? Yes, the unboxing experience is great, but honestly, I don't care that much. I usually just unbox everything, throw away the packaging, and then just use the product. All right, so we have some extra lining here. Not sure if that's extra lining or that's the one here inside that I need to kind of exchange. What I do like about Ruroc is, opposed to Shoei and AGV, they always give you another visor, a dark visor, in addition to the clear one. Now, going into the helmet. The helmet feels about the same weight as my Shoei GTR, so not as lightweight as the AGV K6, but maybe there's something else here in this little box. We have some padding, but that's basically it. Let's get that out of the way. This helmet sack feels quite good, quite premium. I actually like to utilize these kind of bags or dust bags when I'm, for example, going to a coffee meeting or whatever. I don't like putting my helmet on the ground or have it somewhere laying around without any protection, because I don't mind the helmet getting bumped against, but I don't like when people kind of walk by the helmet and then potentially scratch the visor. Therefore, I always bring these dust bags with me to kind of protect the visor from anyone bumping against it when I'm sitting at a coffee shop, for example. While this does feel nice, I feel like it's not as nice as the one from Shoei or AGV, but that's just a very subjective feeling right now. Okay, this looks quite nice. The finish of the glossy material looks really good. So we have carbon fiber and then red paint. I really wanted this in the yellow version because it's more high vis, but that one wasn't available in my size. So I decided on red. This doesn't fit my MT-07 at all and the clothing that I wear, but I wanted something really high vis because, you know, as a motorcycle rider, we are basically invisible to anyone else in a car, and having something that kind of is high vis is great. I prefer, as you can see here in the back, I prefer a white helmet, but that one wasn't available either. So the padding does feel nice. It's not as soft from first impressions like on my Shoei, but again, this is first impressions. This hasn't been worn in at all. What I really dislike is the Fidlock Buckle. Yes, it might be strong. Yes, it might be sharp approved. But if you know my backpack reviews, I have a really low opinion on most Fidlocks because while they are very easy to close, they are also very easy to open up. And with some bags, when you have a Fidlock, you can accidentally open it and then your bag falls to the ground. And I fear that while the Fidlock is very strong and is very easy to close, I personally have the fear that I potentially, for some reason, could accidentally open this Fidlock buckle. At the moment, it feels very strong and not as likely to open accidentally, but that is definitely something that I need to check in the review. But yeah, just now from first impressions, my fear might not be correct. This looks and feels quite good and not as easy to open. So you have to pull this red tab to open it. So right now I would say, yeah, I'm still hesitant with Fidlock, but it's not that bad as I was kind of suspecting. Then, yeah, let's see the opening. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay, I can live with it. There is no Pinlock installed yet. Is there a Pinlock here? I thought oh yeah, there's a Pinlock. Yeah, there is a Pinlock. I live in Hamburg where there is a lot of rain, a lot of moisture. I always need a Pinlock. Unfortunately, then I have to decide on which I want to install the Pinlock, on the clear visor or on the dark visor. The whole mechanism feels okay, but for some reason compared to my AGV, for example, or the Shoei, this feels and sounds a little bit plasticky. It is plastic, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel as smooth to operate and as quality inspiring to open and close it. Again, compared to my Shoei, it's okay, but not as great in direct comparison. Yeah, not as great because I don't know, it feels, again, I don't have the proper word. It feels plasticky in a way and not as sturdy. But yeah, I need to double check. Then I've seen in some reviews, customer reviews, that this closing mechanism isn't that great. Yeah. Yeah, it's actually not that great. It's okay, but I need to confirm that in testing. And some people were complaining about that the rubber gasket isn't as good to close away moisture. And I already can see here, there is a tiny gap here on the side where the rubber gasket is not connecting with the visor. Maybe this gap will close when I put the Pinlock in, but right now I can clearly see a tiny gap. So if it rains, water will get inside actually. I can see this gap. I will try to film it later on so you can see it as well. But right now, yeah, the rubber gasket is not properly connecting with the visor. Maybe that's different once I have the Pinlock in. Let's open up this sticker. Put it to the mic. Yeah, the visor looks good. Let's put it on from first testing. Let's see if my measurement was correct. Yeah, my measurement was definitely correct. It's a little bit tight, but that is okay. It should be firm on your head. It should be tight because obviously all of the padding will kind of mold to your face over time. And yeah. So I would say the fit is quite perfect. It is tight, and that is normal, I would say, because in the beginning, obviously all of the padding is supposed to kind of mold to your head. And yeah, first impressions, again, I do see some downsides compared to my Shoei, the visor in particular. I'm really curious to see how that is when I'm riding my motorcycle, and especially if I get into rain. And yeah, that was my first impressions. Let's go to riding and then give you my full review.
So I don't know if the audio quality will be great this recording. Because I don't have a mic with me, but I just wanted to give some quick, somewhat first impressions riding with the Ruroc EOX system. So my first impressions were really pleased. First and foremost, this is not great if you are wearing glasses, because there are some kind of channels where you put your glasses into, but when you put them into those channels, the glass sits kind of weirdly, like so, at least when you have like these thin frames, and it sits really weird on your face, and it doesn't even touch your nose. So you have to, at least I have to, wear baklava, which I wear anyways. But when I first tested this without the baklava, I noticed that the glasses don't sit on my face right, and they kind of distorted my view, which obviously isn't great. So when you wear a baklava, the baklava kind of holds your glasses in place and onto your nose, and therefore giving you the correct perspective when looking through your glasses. However, what I then notice is that when I do some head checks, these glasses kind of, move really weirdly, and that is not that comfortable. So when wearing glasses, depending on what kind of frame you have, it might not work that well for you inside this Ruroc helmet. Next up, to make those glasses position in air quotes correctly, you need to pull down your chin quite far to the bottom. So I feel like that is the correct way, because then you don't see the nose part of this helmet, but you also see some of the top part of the helmet. And that is actually something that I was kind of looking forward to check out, because in many reviews, so many people claim that this visor and the view is so huge. And honestly, I cannot confirm that. Compared to my Shoei GTR or my AGV K6, I feel like the visibility or the view, the point of view, is basically similarly wide. So yeah, if you hear people kind of proclaiming that the view of this is so wide and so great, cannot confirm. It's great. It's really cool view, but not better, in my humble opinion, compared to the GTR2 or the AGV K6. It's good, but just like in other helmets, I need to pull this down. Maybe if you don't pull it down that much because you don't wear glasses, you don't see the top of the helmet, then maybe you perceive it as bigger. But still, I would say this has the same view angle like the Shoei GTR or AGV K6. In terms of loudness, I always wear earplugs. I would say it has the same loudness like my GTR or AGV K6. It is fairly windy inside with this mouth Airvent. Yeah, but that is my first impression. I would say if you're wearing glasses, the Ruroc isn't the best in terms of airflow and everything else. I will talk about that later.
Alright, now that we have covered the unboxing and some of the first impressions, negatives or downsides that I recorded on the fly, so please excuse that the audio quality wasn't that great on those clips, let's summarize and talk about all of those trade-offs, downsides, negatives. First and foremost, the sizing. I've read a lot about people were kind of confused about the sizing of this Ruroc. While me having a size L, it's not 100% true to size, it fits me. But that being said, all of the cheek pads and padding inside, you have to ride with that helmet for a couple of kilometers or days and weeks to let the padding inside your helmet kind of mold to your face, to the shape of your head, and then eventually it will become more comfortable. So me having some discomfort in the first few rides and getting somewhat of a headache because it was so much kind of squeezing on my head, that has almost been gone or is almost gone away. Excuse, I don't know what the right grammar was for that sentence. But yeah, the cheek pads still are very tight, but I can feel the longer I ride with it, the much better it does get. And yeah, keep that definitely in mind.
So I rode with the Ruroc helmet now for about 100 kilometers for about, I would say, 2 hours. And what I can tell you is it isn't broken in yet, so I don't see any like pressure point, I feel like. No, but it was actually fairly tight. Again, I mentioned before that wearing glasses inside the helmet isn't that great. If you have a balaclava, then the glasses are held in place fairly well. Next, what I noticed is the Shockwave. The audio quality is great. I mean, it's a Cardo system. I have been using a Cardo system on all of my helmets, and the sound quality is always great. However, these buttons aren't that great, especially if you, because of my glasses, pull down the helmet a little bit. These buttons are not oriented in a very practical way where you easily can know which button is which. So you don't know which button is up, which button is down, which is left, which is right. Then they feel inside your glove very small and all of the same. So I was fiddling around with my buttons all over the place. That was really annoying.
Sticking to sizing, what I definitely don't like about this, as far as I know, they have improved upon this with the EOX lineup in comparison to the Atlas lineup. They have multiple shell sizes. I'm a short person with 170 centimeters in height, but I have a huge head. In all my helmets I need size L. And what I noticed is that size L has a huge shell size in comparison to my AGV K6 or my Shoei GTR second edition. And while those helmets also have larger shell sizes, what I really noticed is with this helmet is it is perceivably larger and optically larger than my Shoei helmets, which is probably the due to the reason for this, let's say, skull-like shape, and therefore it being perceived and looking very big. I feel like I look like one of those Funky Pops or bobbleheads. And honestly, this sounds really vain, but if you are a short person, having such a huge helmet and hat on your head, it does look a little bit funky and a little bit weird. Let's be real about that. So that is definitely something that I personally somewhat dislike, and I really want to mention, because I believe there are a couple of you who also wear L or even bigger, then definitely keep that in mind, that those helmets look much larger than a Shoei or a AGV in a similar sizing. And if you are a tall person, I probably wouldn't mention this because this isn't that bad, but if you are short like I am, your body's proportions will get out of whack completely. You look so weird with this helmet. Next up, sticking to size, the visor. While the visor is great, don't get me wrong, this is a really good visor. You have a wide degree of visibility, so that is really good. However, if you see other reviews who will claim, oh, the visor is so great, you see so much and it's amazing, never seen something like that. Yeah, I cannot agree with that, because I feel like this is similar to my Shoei GTR. I don't feel like this is a much bigger field of view than with those helmets. So I feel like that was a little bit too much exaggerated. Next up, continuing with the visor. Switching the visor is easy, it is toolless, but yeah, just like on the Shoei, I feel like it's nothing like special. It's pretty much similar. You push a little lever and you take out the visor, or you put it back in. What I really like though is that you get right away a tinted visor in addition to your clear visor, and you get a Pinlock. As far as I know, the Atlas series does not include a Pinlock, which I feel is a little bit weird. If I'm not completely mistaken, the Atlas series is like their flagship, so I don't understand why those helmets don't have a Pinlock and the EOX series has a Pinlock. Anyway, I think it's really cool that you have two visors inside. In my initial impression when I unboxed this, I said that the clear visor felt a little bit plasticky when I moved it up and down, and it did not feel as premium like on my other helmets. What I noticed is when I attached the tinted visor with the Pinlock, the whole hinge system felt much more having some heft to it. You know, my issue was when I used the clear visor and moved it up and down. In my initial impression, it felt very plasticky. Don't get me wrong, it is plastic, but it felt flimsy in a way. But when I attached the tinted visor with the Pinlock attached, maybe due to it being a little bit more rigid then, it felt not as cheap. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. So I'm not really sure if that is actually a downside, a trade-off, or a sign of the build quality of this helmet. I'm not sure, but again, in my first impression, I felt like the clear visor did not feel that high quality. Now, the next downside that I really want to mention for all of you wearing glasses. This helmet has a channel where glasses can go through, and which supposedly makes wearing glasses inside this helmet a little bit better. But this is a very personal and subjective thing, because my glasses in combination with my head did not work that well inside this helmet. So when I put my helmet on and then slide the glasses through those channels, my glasses float above my nose and have a completely wrong distance to my eyes, which makes looking through my glasses really weird, and it gave me a little bit of headaches. So the solution to this is to use a balaclava, pull down the chin of the Ruroc helmet so it is a little bit further down, and then you kind of, in air quotes, squeeze in your glasses and they are being held in place by the balaclava. That was my solution. It's not perfect and it's not as good as in my other helmets, but it still works. But definitely, if you have the potential to test out one of these helmets and you wear glasses, definitely try it out first. Your frames might be different, your head shape might be different, so definitely keep that in mind, that this isn't as perfect as you might like. Next up, continuing with pulling down your chin, or segueing to the chin.
Today was a very windy day with 40 km/h winds, so a very good day to test wind buffeting. On the highway I was noting saying it was all okay, but the wind does catch in this part, the chin part, and kind of pulls up on the helmet when you have a lot of wind. So I noticed that my head was always kind of going a little bit from the chin upwards. Not too terribly, but compared to my Shoei and AGV, it's definitely worse, but not that terrible. It's okay, but still something that I wanted to mention, that with high winds it can catch your chin and then pull up a little bit.
And as you were able to see right now, I was doing a head check. It's not as wind resistant, I would say, as when the wind is kind of pulling. And what's the opposite of wind resistant? It's not as wind flowy. I'm not sure if that's the word, but when I'm doing my shoulder check, it's okay. But I do feel some wind kind of pulling my head in one direction. So, but yeah, I'm riding a naked bike. Maybe that's also something to take into consideration. But I've seen so many people kind of raving about a couple of these features. One was that this is really good in wind, and I would say yes, it is okay,
but it's not as, like, I would say, whoa, that's the best helmet in wind ever. It's okay. It's not perfect, but it's okay. Continuing with wind and air, the helmet is really has a lot of airflow inside. So if you're living in a hot country or in a hot area, then this helmet is definitely for you. I cannot comment on the noise because I always wear earplugs. I'm a professional film editor. My ears are really important to me for my work, so I always wear custom earplugs. I would highly recommend you wear those too. So I cannot comment on the noisiness, but with my earplugs, I don't feel like this is noisier than my GTR version 2 or my AGV K6. So now, that brings us to my verdict.
Please let me remind you how I review. I've mentioned a lot of negatives, trade-offs and drawbacks in the beginning of this video. I realized that was a lot, but please keep in mind, I personally consider a review something for you to inform yourself about potential drawbacks, flaws and negatives, to kind of evaluate if the product is for you or if those trade-offs actually apply to you or if you can live with those flaws. Because I feel like if you were coming to this video, you already know that you might want to buy this product. You already looked at the product page. You know the features, you know the positives. That is already in your head. You want to know, is this something where I put money into? And then you look at the negatives and then either you say, oh, that's not for me, or you say, totally can live with that. That doesn't apply to me. For example, I'm only 170 centimeters tall, so I'm a short person, but I have a huge head. So I have size L and this shell size is huge on me. Maybe that doesn't apply to you. Maybe you are taller than I am or you're luckier than I am and have a smaller head, so you can go with size S or size M. And then that negative, that trade-off doesn't apply to you. So yeah, keep that in mind. I am intentionally nitpicking to give you as many negatives as possible. Now, the question is the EOX a good helmet? In my humble opinion, yes, it is a good helmet. It has good fit and finish. It actually, I mentioned in the beginning, it was very tight, but all of the padding inside has molded to my head. You need to kind of break in the helmet and let all of the padding kind of mold to your head. So you need to take that into consideration. Everything will mold to your head. It was the same with these helmets. These were tight in the beginning, but over time the padding will kind of shape and mold to your face and will become much more comfortable, and I can confirm this now has become much more comfortable. Now let's go over some of the positives before going into the negatives and then my final verdict. Positives. I feel like the fit and finish is great. I personally did not have any issues with the inner lining, with the padding. Nothing kind of fell out and I was able to put it on and put it off. I read some people having issues with this back padding kind of pulling out. Did not happen to me. Maybe it was because I'm wearing a balaclava and it was a little bit easier to take off. Don't know, but I didn't have any issues with the padding. The fit and finish overall is really good. My initial impressions about the visor feeling a little bit flimsy. Not the case once you install the Pinlock. Maybe due to the Pinlock or this dark visor, not really sure. I only use the dark visor, but the dark visor with the Pinlock feels much more quality inspiring or similar like on my AGV or Shoei helmet. It had a little bit more heft to it in a way. It's really difficult to describe for me in English, but it feels better to open and close. More confidence inspiring. That out of the way. The Shockwave system, the sound quality, but I attribute that to the Cardo system with its JBL technology. The sound quality is great. Overall, the airflow inside, we have at the moment 30 degrees Celsius, really cool. I was kept cool inside. The field of view, I would say, is good. And I really want to kind of underline this because I was kind of amazed in a negative way that so many reviewers were kind of raving about the field of view being better than sliced bread. This is good, don't get me wrong, this is a good field of view. but it's just the same like on my AGV or Shoei GTR. I did not notice anything particularly better. It's good, it's not better. That is really important, and I feel like many people were raving too much about this field of view and the visor. Overall, I feel like it is a really good looking and, from my experience, high quality helmet. Now, summarizing the negatives. As I said in the beginning, there is a small little gap here where the visor doesn't touch the rubber gasket of the helmet. Even with the Pinlock installed, there is a gap. I have not been able to test this in the rain because we have summer. It wasn't raining at all when I was testing this. However, I read some written reviews on the internet that said they noticed the gap, but they did not have any issues with water getting inside. I cannot deny nor confirm this. Maybe this small little gap is a design decision where cold air gets in here and then exhausts out of this small little gap so it doesn't kind of fog up even if you don't have a Pinlock installed. Maybe that is their design decision. Don't know. But personally, I don't really like the gap, so I don't know if I will use this helmet when it's autumn or winter. I also ride in winter and in autumn. Not sure if I would ride with this when water can get inside potentially. Next up, continuing or segueing to airflow. The air vent here in the mouth part is great. There's a lot of wind coming in, but this small little lever to close it up is inside. So there is a chin curtain, and if you have, like me, wearing a balaclava, wearing gloves, and there is a chin curtain, it is so difficult to get inside to close this vent up. On the Shoei and the AGV, it is outside, so it's easy to close. And now you might argue, oh, I don't need to close that in the summer. Yes, but if you have allergies like I do, if you drive through a storm of pollen, I'm not sure if that's the right word, the stuff that falls down from trees that causes your allergies, you really want to quickly close everything so none of that stuff gets inside and causes you to sneeze like crazy. So not being able to close this quickly without hassling through this chin guard is really annoying. And that is, for me personally, again, all of these negatives might be nitpicking, might not apply to you, but for me, with someone who has allergies, this is terrible. I do not like this at all. You really want or need to be able to close the vents quickly from my personal experience. Don't like that. Segueing to stuff that you close and open quickly. I assume that those of you viewing this channel don't know my bag reviews because you were looking for an EOX review and came to my channel. I review bags, and on some bags they use Fidlocks, and there is a multitude of different Fidlock styles. While Fidlocks are intended to be closed quickly due to their magnetic system, the downside is they also can be easily accidentally opened and then send your bag flying to the ground, which is the reason why I don't really like Fidlocks. Besides V-buckle style Fidlocks, we have a small little pull tab to open up the Fidlock buckle. That's the same with this. You can open up the Fidlock by pulling a small little tab, and then it opens up. From my experience, this did not happen accidentally when I was riding, and it felt very secure. So that is the good part. The bad part, it's not as easy to close as you might think if you have gloves on. Yes, the magnetic system will kind of find, both ends will kind of find each other. But there is not really tactical feel and tactical noise if the closing has engaged properly. So if you have your gloves on, it is very difficult to kind of really know if the Fidlock has kind of engaged in its locking mechanism. I really dislike that because maybe my balaclava was kind of stuck in between that. Again, my issue, maybe not for you, but for me, something was stuck in there and then I wasn't really sure, is it really closed? So I always kind of triple checked if this was closed. I really dislike that. On the Shoei GTR, you have the ratchet system where you can kind of argue, yeah, that's not as safe as well. But when you close it, you hear this, and excuse the noise, this ratcheting, right? This noise where you can kind of know, oh, okay, I closed it. Everything is secure and it's just as easy to open up like the Fidlock system. So I would have loved a ratchet system If you want something that is easily to close and open, but still gives you the ease of mind to know when it's closed. Obviously, I would have preferred a double D-ring system like on the AGV's K6, but if you would argue I want something that is easily to open and close, then I would rather have the ratchet system instead of this Fidlock system, to be quite honest. Which brings us to the question, would I buy this? Kind of quickly summarizing some of the negatives that apply to me. Not that great with glasses, but I somehow got used to it. This being so big, I feel like a Funko Pop. Maybe I should apply to Funko Pop wearing this and they make a Funko Pop out of me with this bubbly head on there. Maybe that's something that I should consider. But yeah, it is really big. It looks kind of weird on me. And I know that's really shallow and not sure if I can get over that a little bit, but yeah. Then it has a lot of safety certification, DOT, ECE, it is sharp tested, but I'm not sure about this nose part, if this is actually secure. This is pure speculation on my part. I've never ridden an RI helmet, but they have this philosophy of making the helmet really roundish, but also a little bit ugly. But their philosophy is that when you hit the ground, because it is roundish, your head doesn't kind of get stuck on the asphalt and kind of glances off more easily. And I feel like this could much more easily kind of catch on the ground, this nose part. Speculation on my part. I have no idea. I mean, I put stuff on my other helmets, but I feel like those can kind of easily break off. This nose part can't. So I'm not personally 100% sure about that. The Fidlock, don't really like that. The Airvent here in the front, don't like that either. So kind of summarizing of that, yeah, those are trade-offs that I don't really like. So if I had to choose, do I get a 600 GTR or a 600 Ruroc, which I will get in a second. It's not 600, it's 550 or something, but yeah, I'm not 100% sure. So don't quote me on the pricing. But again, if the pricings are the same, because also GTR sometimes you get it with a discount, so the prices become somewhat similar. If I had to choose based on the same price, I personally would go with the Shoei, just because I feel like the fit and finish is just slightly better on the Shoei. I like the ratchet system more. With glasses, it's much more comfortable. And from my personal speculation, I feel like it is more safer because it has much more of a roundish shape. However, Ruroc always has some discounts, especially with the single color option. I mean, that's for all of the brands, right? Shoei also has the GTR in just pure white or pure black, and those are cheaper than the graphics one. If this would be 450 or maybe 400 sometimes, I think this is a really good alternative. As I said, I really like the look, especially if you go a little bit smaller in shell size because you have a smaller head, or you are taller than I am and then the proportions are right. I think this is a good looking helmet. I do like the look of this helmet. And if you consider you get a tinted visor and a clear visor in it, remember, on the Shoei, as far as I know, a tinted visor is around 90 euros. Don't quote me on that, not really sure. But anyways, you have to take that investment into consideration. If this is 450 or 400, I think this is a valid alternative because some of the positives, and I really want to underline it, aren't better than on the Shoei or the AGV. The field of view is great. It's similar or the same like on the Shoei and the AGV. So that is really good. From my personal experience, the fit and finish is great. The padding inside felt comfortable. It is DOT and ECE rated. Yes, I would rather consider the Shoei a little bit safer, but that's just my pure speculation. So don't quote me on that either. So if it's the same price as the GTR, especially if you also would consider getting a new tinted visor and the Cardo system that you need to glue on the side. Yes, there is a Sena system. Personally, don't like Sena that much. Didn't work for me that well, so I prefer Cardo. So if you take all of that into consideration, the Shoei would be more expensive, but if they were purely the same price, so if this would be like 500 when it came out new, and you put it next to a Shoei GTR in a single color, and they had the same price, me personally, I would rather go with the Shoei, but at a discounted price, which as far as I can tell, is always happening. Definitely take the Ruroc into consideration. after you looked at all of the negatives, the trade-offs that I mentioned in this review. Because if you're wearing glasses, maybe try it first. But other than that, I think this is a cool helmet that you should take into consideration. Very important. All the gear, all of the time. Your head is the most important part. Do not cheap out on the helmet. Get the best that you can afford. Don't buy those 100 or 200 euro helmets. Personally, I would never do that. I'd rather invest 400 and upwards in a helmet at least. Get a name brand that either has been proven or that you trust because you watched a lot of unbiased reviews and took those negatives into consideration. Do not only watch the reviews where only positives are mentioned. You look at the reviews with negatives. And with that out of the way, I really would like to know from you, have you been an early adopter of Ruroc helmet, like the Atlas 1.0? Did you have any issues? And what was your experience? Let me know in the comment section below. And also, what did you think about all of that influencer marketing back then? I personally was really turned off by that because I was interested in the Ruroc. I wanted to buy it. I looked for a review. I only found positive reviews back then. At least in the beginning, I was really turned off by that. Let me know, what did you think about that? And I really want to kind of credit where credit is due. Applaud Ruroc for actually letting me review this helmet, especially when they knew that I would kind of cover the negatives. And it shows, at least in my eyes, a lot of trust in the product and a lot of confidence in their own brand that they did that and that they knew that I would cover negatives. And as you were able to tell, I covered a lot of negatives here, but I also say, hey, look at them, use them for your purchase decision and check if they apply to you. And that is why I kind of respect Ruroc for letting me do this review. So kudos on them, because in the past, not that long ago, I actually had a brand. Although the verdict was positive, they said like, oh, why did you cover any negatives at all? And I was like, because it's review. I need to cover negatives, and why did you expect me just to cover positives, right? So again, I applaud Ruroc for letting me do an unbiased review of the EOX. So good on you. Maybe you can improve some of the issues that I mentioned, for example, the vent and maybe the gap in the visor. Maybe you can improve on that. And put a ratchet system. I don't like the Fidlock. Anyways, let me know in the comment section below about all of your answers of the questions that I previously mentioned. If you want to check out the AGV K6 helmet review, check out the video up here. YouTube thinks that you like the video down here, and don't forget to subscribe by clicking the button up here. And thanks for watching this really long video. If you watched to the end, comment bobblehead so I know that you watched until the end. Thank you very much.